Despite his relatively young age, Magnus Carlsen has already secured his place in chess history as a legend of the game. In a short space of time, his accomplishments have been extraordinary. In December 2012, he broke Garry Kasparov's record to become the highest-rated chess player of all time. He followed up this achievement in 2013 by defeating Vishy Anand to become world chess champion. Carlsen's universal style, positional mastery, and incredible mental strength add up to make him a formidable opponent. Learn from Carlsen. On attack, let's look at some example games. Magnus Carlsen, 14 years old, VRSUS. Predrag Kalik, 45 years old. Wijk Z, 2005, Tournament, Netherlands. E4. E6, French defense. D4. D5. Knight D2. C5. E take D5. E take D5. Knight G to F3. C4. The experienced Grand Master attempts to confuse his young opponent with an offbeat line. B3. C take B3. If black get away with C3, black won't be able to support the extended C3 pawn in his underdeveloped state. A take B3. Bishop B4, continuing to provoke. Knight E5. Carlsen invites black's bishop into C3. Knight E7. If bishop C3, with queen F3, white has a double attack. Bishop D3. Knight B to C6. Castle kingside, a pawn sacrifice. Carlsen continues to incite the b4 bishop, refusing to cover C3 and D4 with bishop B2. Bishop C3, at last, black agrees, but I think he is just asking for it. Rook A4. Bishop take D4, a dubious move. Knight takes C6, good move. Knight takes C6. Bishop A3. White gets sufficient compensation for the sacrificed pawn, with development lead and black's king unable to castle kingside. Bishop E6. Knight F3. Bishop B6, it's a mistake. Queen A1, one wrong look, and you risk irrevocably offending black's haughty queen, who veers left in order to threaten right. Reedy-esque stuff. Black is unable to protect G7. Queen C7, a dubious move. Nikolic isn't too concerned about G7, since he plans to castle long next move. B4, it's an inaccuracy. The offer of G7 is met with stony silence. A move aimed at discouraging queenside castling, and an example of Carlsen's non-materialistic philosophy, embraced in his youth. F6, it's an inaccuracy. Now black's woes magnify tenfold. Rook E1, a dubious move. King F7, it's a mistake. B5, great move. Knight A5, Nikolic struggles to contain multiple outbreaks in his defensive barrier and shelters a profusion of chronic problems concerning his king's safety. Knight D4 is both thematic and strong, but in the seams of the position is hidden an even more powerful one. Queen D1, the white queen's services are once again needed on the kingside. Such a move, which displays remarkable understanding of the position's subtle needs, has a way of branding its way to our recollection. This astounding prelude to a multifaceted combination gives us the feeling that we are allowed in on the great secret of the mind of genius, now about to be revealed. The unready shot, transferring the queen back to her square of origin, soon brings black's king to his knees. Rook A, 2e8, it's an inaccuracy. Knight G5, check, brilliant move. Clearance, deflection. White's queen, having returned from her adventure to a 1, now seeks a new one on the other side of the board. That which was once a discussion in a hypothetical context makes a smooth transition to the here and now. This is selective tormenting of black's king, the way summer fleas find your rider's flesh and blood delicious, yet inexplicably never seem interested in biting my wife or dogs. F take G5. Queen F3, check, great move. King G8. Rook take E6. After his fall, ugly purple bruises appear like not-so-holy stigmata on the E6 bishop's rear end. Nikolic resign. Now comes the deflection shot. Queen F7. Black queen and king cling to one another in their time of grief. Bishop F5. Great move. The wizard raises his arms, and the air above him begins to quiver with power. Black can't do much about the threat. Rook take E8, check. G6. Rook take E8, check. Queen take E8. Bishop E6, check. King G7. Bishop G2, check. D4. Rook take D4, forces mate. His glorious grace's untimely passing left a void in our hearts, which can never be filled, lies the rook, whose heart seems rather delighted by the king's death. Levin Aronian, 28 years old, playing as white, versus Magnus Carlsen, 20 years old, playing as black. Amber Rapid and Blindfold Tournament, 2010, Nice, France. Knight F3. Knight F6. C4. G6. Knight C3. Bishop G7. E4. D6. D4. Castle kingside. Bishop E2, King's Indian defense, orthodox variation. E5. Castle kingside. Knight C6. D5. Knight E7. Knight E1, the dreaded long variation of the classical King's Indian. This line is a memory contest, where those who dare enter must be familiar with close to 30 moves of theory. I have a feeling that in 10 years the number will reach move 40, so maybe we'll have grandmasters who reach the time control, each having consumed 1 minute on their clocks. Knight D7. Knight D3. F5. Bishop D2. Knight F6. F3. King H8, slightly offbeat, although black can later play Knight E to G8 and Bishop H6, swapping off the bad bishop. G4, Aronian responds with an oddity of his own. Question: doesn't White's last move expose his king to attack? C6. Answer: it can, as it did in this game. Yet the move in a strange way makes white's king safer, as well, since his king's defenders are granted more room to post around him. King g2, it's an inaccuracy. This may be theory, but in this game Carlsen's coming play puts to question this move's soundness. b5, black can't make headway against white's king by solely concentrating on the king side, so he softens white's central grip by challenging the pawn front at every conceivable point on the chain. b3, this move was new at the time. a5. Knight f2, dubious move. Theoretically, white would like to do just this. The trouble is doing so activates black's pieces. b4, the start of a deep plan, the first step of which is to reduce white's influence over d5. Knight a4. Bishop b7, Carlsen places his bishop on the same diagonal as white's king. Question: isn't b7 still a long way from g2? Answer: not if black sets up a sacrifice on d5 to blast open the center. Rook c1, it's a mistake, with bishop d3, blunts the power of black's coming sacrifice. Question: can't black continue exactly as Carlsen did in the game? Answer: he can, but white is infinitely better set up to deal with the coming sacrifice on d5. F take e4. F take e4. C take d5, good move. E take d5. Knight e, take d5, brilliant move. The culmination of black's intent. C take d5. Knight take d5, threat, knight e3, check. Now white's harmony scatters, as when a person carrying a manuscript suddenly walks into a gust of wind, which sends pages flying in every direction. For the sacrifice, black gets to healthy central pawns, an explosion of piece activity down the h1a8 diagonal and endless attack, initiative. For Aronian, this was all compounded by the fact that this was a blindfold game, which makes the defender's survival probability rate dip that much further. King g1, there is no safe square for white's king. d4, good move, opening the g7 bishop's diagonal. White's position grows florid with a fever which continues to rise to near-fatal levels. Knight take e4, the only try, otherwise white can resign. Bishop d4, check, good move. Rook f2, it's a mistake. Rook take f2, when I played this, I believed that I was winning on the spot, but then immediately noticed his only defense, writes Carlsen. When we notice a combination, which we believe could finish us, and by some miracle our opponent misses it, we feel the blessed relief of the acquitted. Knight take f2, exercise planning, they'll begin to infect the healthy in white's camp. After knight take f2, white's taut position is stretched to its outer defensive limits. Find one powerful move and you render white's resistance meaningless. With bishop g5, great move. Why is it that some combinational patterns are married to our minds in familiarity, while with others, we miss the pattern over and over? This, Carlsen's recommendation, is a double attack which puts maximum strain upon black to force the win. Queen h4, pile onto f2 and h2. The pestilent queen sickens all who touch her life with a starburst of ill will. Queen e1, if white tries to protect f2 with his bishop, black switches the target to h2 with bishop e5. The bishop laughs openly in the white king's face. Rook f8, white's forces are pinned down on f2, like a collector's butterfly specimens on a corkboard. Bishop f3. Rook take f3. Queen e4, it's an inaccuracy. The queen's nervous titter betrays her true feelings. Not the most effective double attack we have ever witnessed, but we must remember that this was a blindfold game. Queen take f2, check. Aronian resign. After. King h1. Queen take d2. Queen e8, check. King g7, the checks soon run out and white gets mated. Magnus Carlsen, playing as white, versus Hikaru Nakamura, playing as black, Tata Steel 2013 tournament, Wijk aan Zee, Netherlands. Magnus start with e4. c4, responds Nakamura. Knight f3. Knight c6, Sicilian defense. d4. C take d4. Knight take d4. e5, Sicilian defense, open, Kalashnikov variation. Knight b5. d6. g3, a dubious move. Carlsen's choice this line, considered a theoretically harmless sideline, with which he tests Nakamura's memory and also leads him into possibly unfamiliar waters. This is an instance of Carlsen applying Larsen's opening playbook, which I talked about in the introduction. h5, and apparently Carlsen's opening ambush succeeds, or perhaps Nakamura steered clear of the theoretical move to avoid Carlsen's preparation. Knight 1, to c3, a dubious move. a6. Knight a3. b5, a new move. Knight d5. Knight g to e7. Bishop g2. Bishop g4, a dubious move. f3, it's an inaccuracy move. Bishop e6, a dubious move. Nakamura begins to foster a theory built upon a false premise. Carlsen called this decision very strange. Question: it looks natural to me. Why did Carlsen think the move is strange? Answer: because now black is unable to play knight take d5, as it would hang a piece, and bishop take d5, as was later played in the game, seriously weakens black's light squares. c3. h4. Knight c2. Bishop take d5, an inaccuracy move. Consistency isn't such a great thing if you are on the wrong course to begin with. Nakamura's decision debilitates his light squares for the remainder of the game. E take d5. Knight a5. f4, freeing his g to bishop and challenging black's center. Knight f5, a dubious move. g4, we wouldn't even have considered such a move and would have automatically played the safe queen d3. Question: didn't white just fatally weaken his own king with his last move? Answer: I was stunned when Carlsen played his move, which also appeared suicidal to me. Somehow Carlsen understood that his grip on the light squares keeps his king safe, and it is Nakamura's king who is endangered. This is an example of Carlsen's lethally perfect intuition in positions of great complexity, which guides him to astonishing decisions the rest of us would incorrectly reject. h3, good move. Nakamura logically opens h4 for his pieces. When it comes to intensity levels for each side's potential attack, we note an asymmetrical pace, with black's side appearing faster, and if we came to such a conclusion, we would be dead wrong. Bishop e4, the question of which piece should enter h4 begins to press upon Nakamura. Knight h4, When we believe in something with all our heart, and then it fails us, we tend to turn our faith to its opposing force. Question: isn't a queen check on h4 devastating for white? Answer: not at all. If the queen swoops into h4, black simply doesn't have enough pieces to bother white's seemingly weakened king. Castle kingside. Great move. Here I thought I was just much better, said Carlsen after the game. g6. King h1. It's a mistake. White dominates the light squares, so Carlsen places his king on the safety of that color. Bishop g7. f5, increasing his grip on the light squares and smothering black's counterplay. G take f5. G take f5, the human move. The computer prefers bishop take f5. Knight g2, it's a mistake. f6, great move, line opening. Black has a choice of taking, which fatally opens the f-file or backing up to f8 when his pieces can barely move. Bishop f8, close proximity to a diseased thing begets disease in yourself. The bishop's once sterling qualities now come into question, and white's choking f6 pawn poisons the harmony in black's defense. Queen f3. Queen c7. Knight b4. Knight b7, preparing to challenge white's bishop's post on e4. Knight c6. Knight c5. Bishop f5. Challenging e4 didn't help black a bit, who now worries about the undermining bishop take h3 as well. Knight d7. The computer frowns on this move, yet everything else loses as well. Bishop g5. Clearly white's intimidating bishops firmly believe in a non-separation of church and state. Rook g8. Queen h5. In the dim light of the room, the queen's expression is unreadable, the uncertainty of which makes black's king all the more anxious. Knight b6. Exercise combination alert. Black intends to undermine the c6 knight with knight take d5 next. The fact that all the necessary conditions are assembled for white's combination is no guarantee of success. We must still find the correct continuation. What would you play? Answer: pin. White threatens to cut off the black queen's communication to f7 with knight e7 next. Bishop e6. Your treason comes at a price: pain, imprisonment, humiliation in this life, and the flames of hell in the next. The bishop lectures black's king. Carlsen had to factor in black's coming deflection trick. Rook take g5. The rook, diminished and close to exhausted, makes a final wild lunge at his oppressor, choosing to die a hero's death. Queen take g5. F take e6. D take e6. Black is helpless. The trouble is a mob's thirst for violence is unslakable by logical argument. Nakamura resigns. Now if black tries, queen takes c6, then follows its f7, checkmate. Thank you for watching the video. Please like, share, and subscribe.